So preliminary architecture analysis, what means preliminary? In any organization, you have initiatives that are still at the very early stages. They may come from the management, they can come from regulatory requirements, they may come from grassroots, right, from some ideas. Preliminary means you may or may not have those initiatives on your books yet, right? So you just start and you're kicking the tires. And how would you approach the analysis of such initiative from MBSE standpoint? So we will talk about modeling approach, and then we'll review very limited scenario and the way we model that scenario using UAF version 1.2, Cameo to 2022, and we apply, in this case, some elements of business architecture the way it's prescribed by Business Architecture Guild. So modeling approach, you could think of approach as a model of your core model, right? It's not quite meta model, but still you kind of define your pattern, modeling pattern you will be following. Is it carved in stone? Probably no. You would adjust it as you go, right? Doing some sort of refinements as you see the fit. But in general, you will have an idea how you would approach modeling your initiative in the organization and do your assessment of the impacts of the initiative onto your enterprise architecture. So if you look at this proposed pattern, you start with objectives, right? Please be mindful, there is a big difference between goals and objectives. And oftentimes people at all levels in enterprise think they talk about objectives, but they may have goals in mind and vice versa. So fortunately enough, UF has objective-object. Then perhaps you would be using functional domains, and each organization has functional domains. You may or may not have it distilled and described, but you would have to come up with ideas how your organization is structured, right? It could be borrowed from org's chart. The next object is operational service, and it's not one object, could be so many services. So those operational performers are important in any scope because you'd have to figure out how your initiative can be projected or impact operations and units and roles within your organization that are supposed to accommodate changes or perhaps perform something that is new to your organization. Coming down to the next level, and that is the high-level activities. So think of those high-level activities as operations, mission threats, any type of high-level activities. At this point, you were talking about preliminary analysis, so they have to be higher-level activities. And typically, if you talk to your business people in operations, they would have good ideas what those activities are. The next level here is capabilities, right? So those activities can be matched to capabilities, and please be mindful of the difference between capabilities and your platforms, devices, chassis, anything that people call capabilities, but they are real physical objects, right? So transportation capability does not mean Chevy Impala, right? Because Chevy Impala is a real vehicle and it's not a capability. Capability is ability to transport or move loads from point A to point B. So please be mindful of those distinctions. The next level here is services that exhibit your capabilities. And we do get questions about services, what they are, and oftentimes people just think my Norton antivirus is a service. Well, in terms of specific operating system, certain piece of software can register itself as a service. In terms of modeling, service is a higher level of abstraction. So service is a firewall, antivirus, that is a service. You can think of any type of higher level services as a ability to deliver certain functionality, right? So in that particular case, Cameo is a tool, but service is MBSE modeling tool. That is a service. As the technology may change over time and the vendors change it and they actually ramp up new products, the service may remain the same. So all those platforms and tools under services can be replaceable, but in that case, the concept of the service that you need may remain the same. Then in the preliminary analysis, you need to outline the impact on your major enterprise systems, and these are larger scale system, of course. You may actually identify some opportunities for more specific systems here, especially if they are unique and so prominent. Many people talk about AI, right? Or ChatGPT. It's not an enterprise level system by any stretch, but if your initiative is concerned with that, you may actually emphasize that here, but in general, you would focus on major systems, or systems of systems here. And finally, we arrive at the whole point of analysis. You're doing the assessment how the changes will affect your systems here, how big those changes are, how complex those changes are. And if you can provide estimates at that level, that will be very much helpful in the preliminary analysis. So let's move on to our scenario. And the scenario is, I think it's very typical these days. A global company operates in Asia Pacific, South America, and North America regions. Of course, each region has its own service desk that operates on the local systems that are localized. And the North American service desk, along with the enterprise services, pioneered the new enterprise-wide architecture for business analytics, and it becomes a new standard across the organization. Those analytics are concerned with quality of service in this particular scenario, and let's suppose, the analytical solution is based on the cloud. So as the objective here, we want to maximize ROI on investment in the enterprise analytics, implement tools to boost productivity of the service desks by 20%, and improve customer experience. And as a bonus here, we're going to phase out those local regional analytical systems over the course of 3 years. Again, following that pattern that we reviewed, we identified the functional domains here. And we model these functional domains as operational architectures. And you could see enterprise analytics includes already North American analytics, and they use information coming from the service desk. And then you have the regional analytical systems that use the local information coming from their local service desks. And then you have enterprise finance and enterprise procurement, because we start thinking, do we have any impact on the contractual aspect of this initiative? Do we need to add additional funding, or what we have is good enough? So if we look at the information that is involved here, the service desks supply incident reporting as well as self-service portals. CRM provides customer information, so you know who actually made the call and opened a ticket, and global workforce provides employee information. This is very important, I think, to understand that by doing this current state type of architecture with the connectivity between major performers, you identify business objects that are in circulation here. I have not seen people using BOM, not BOM as explosives, the BOM, which is business object model, right? Because preliminary analysis is very high level. If you identified your business objects, very high level business objects, that's good enough. It will lead the future work to BOM, to information architecture, and finally to the data architecture. But at this level, you're probably less concerned with that. In this preliminary analysis, you look at the your organization capabilities that will be impacted by proposed initiative. And you could see several capabilities that might be at the core, like agreement management, customer management for this type of company. Some supporting capabilities. And I made a reference here. This capability model was partially borrowed from the BizBook that the Guild of Business Architects publishes. So you don't have to specify which of these capabilities are strategic, core, or supporting capabilities, because you're interested in impact of that initiative you're considering onto the capabilities, and that's what matters. In case if you go to very low level capabilities, it will pollute the analysis. So you want to stay away from the third and fourth level of capabilities if you want to have a clear picture. So how you tie all those pieces together? Because when we discussed the preliminary analysis as an approach, that question popped up immediately. Why don't we have that picture with the capabilities on the first page? Well, logically, as you go through the process of analyzing your initiative, how often would you see a manager coming to you and say, hey, Greg, or John, or somebody, how we update the capability, or how we build new capability? Management typically does not speak that lingo, right? So you do want to tie all these pieces together, from objectives to domains to activities and then capabilities, because this preliminary analysis document will be useful to your enterprise architects, portfolio architects, domain architects. So they will be notified because certain things will matter. And here in the center, you have operational activities that actually higher level activities we talked about, right? In this particular case, pay invoice, manage contracts. And then you have the capabilities of building quality of service reports regionally, and at the centralized location, we build North American report as well as consolidated quality of service report. It's also important to note that when you show your current state, in the preliminary analysis, you basically model exactly the way the processes and systems and capabilities were built. Presumably, you would go and socialize with your fellow architects working in the domains, possibly management, and that serves the purpose of communication, right? Because as you go and interview them and try to figure out what actually is at the core, what kind of capabilities may be impacted, what kind of activities may be impacted, at this point, they already know that this initiative is considered. So it serves two purposes. You extract the knowledge, you model the future initiative. At the same time, everybody's aware something maybe isn't planning. And then you project the future state. This future state could be the first interim state. It could be ultimately your future state, where you would see that regional analytical capabilities or regional domains are not here anymore. So from this perspective, from this future state perspective, those regional analytical domains, they got merged into the enterprise analytics, right? Presumably that was done before to the North American analytics. And then as you move on to analysis of the services, and you could see the ticket management service was identified here, customer contact planning, workforce directory, employee skills services. All those services, they are identified as impacted services because they are linked to particular performers. And you have seen these performers before over here, right? CRM, global workforce. So when you come to analysis of impacted services over here, CRM is here, global workforce, you recognize these performers. You start with the performers and you move on to impacted services doing this type of analysis. And I hope by now, using this example, you see that services are clearly abstraction layer between operations and the systems. You may also identify organizationally impact on specific units within your organization. You could perhaps go above and beyond and show the whole organization hierarchy, but honestly, from preliminary analysis standpoint, this is good enough. This is really good enough. You identify the units that will be impacted by change. Interestingly enough, you could see that services may actually be implemented by various systems. And in this situation, you may have one service implemented by one system, or you could have a larger system. In this case, the vendor's offering may or may not help us. So one system may implement several services. That's the case when the vendor tells you, we're giving you antivirus, and at the same time, we give you ability to do this, this, and that, right? That's the value proposition. So you have to be mindful because you may have systems dedicated to specific services, or you could have a larger, bulky enterprise software that actually projects itself to several services that performs so many different things. When you go to analysis of impacted systems, you start with, of course, services, and you could trace the capabilities over here that services exhibit. It's all in UF available, so it's very easy to model if you have that type of knowledge. If you do not have that knowledge, if some capabilities are totally unknown to you, it's time to socialize with business people, with management. It's time to extract that knowledge, look up the framework, and perhaps offer some sort of set of capabilities. And if you hear somebody screaming and giving you that feedback, that arguing that it's not exactly the capability we need or we want or something, that's good, because you take that input and you put it in the model, right? You will do refinement. And of course, this type of structure allows you to describe systems that implement services, and they all tie to capabilities. So you could have pretty much three-dimensional picture here. And again, pay attention to this type of matching, because capabilities may be implemented by or exhibited by more than one service, and the systems may actually contribute to that ambiguity, because one system may actually provide so many different services. As you could see here, Zendesk has so many different services, and just a disclaimer, SCI does not endorse any particular piece of software. So if you see the names that you recognize, it's just sample analysis. So finally, when you know the systems impacted, organization units impacted by your initiative, and the services and operations, right? It's a good question. What would it take to actually implement your initiative? In this case, you would use the measurement sets. And we used, for this particular example, we used t-shirt size model from ranging from extra large to small when it comes to estimating the scale, and the complexity is high, medium, low. But you could use any type of numeric measurements, of course, 1 to 10 or Fibonacci numbers, or anything that you feel comfortable with. So we applied measurements. Presumably, as an architect, you talk to your peers in the domains, in the corresponding business units, and you would do the estimates using this type of measurement. So you could see the estimates were applied to various parts of this model, and you could have measurements on the operational level, you could have measurements on the capabilities level, and finally you could have measurements applied to the system level. And for preliminary analysis, that's good enough, because it would give the management a level of assurance that certain complexity is recognized, and architects and business people opined on the feasibility of that initiative. So this type of measurements, as you can see, can be depicted on the diagram that you have seen. And it's important to note that sometimes you work in organizations where you have access to people working in various parts of organization on the architecture level, and sometimes various parts of organizations are so close, they tell you, don't you worry, we have everything under control, here is the estimates. And those estimates may come from business people that actually commingle with, let's put it that way, commingle with system folks working for them in those particular units. So even though the measurements came, we put them under operational performers, because in that particular case, the measurements came from the business side, let's put it that way. So what should we do? Going back to the very first slide, what can we do with all this information that we collected? Of course, the tool allows you to build a report, and if you have engineers savvy enough to build a customized template that your organization will be using systemically, you could generate that report using the tool. If you do not have a report template, and you're not satisfied with the standard template, which may generate a few thousand pages for a model, for a good model, right? then you would just simply copy and paste things into your presentation, right? That's the way to do it. Now, in the morning, many folks raised hands indicating that they're just starting with MBSE, just starting. And the preliminary analysis, modeling, using MBSE in preliminary analysis allows you to set up that beachhead, right? Because you talk to the folks in all parts of the organization, you maintain the awareness, you collect the operational and architectural information. So it's a good way to introduce MBSE into your organization because, first of all, there is no impact on development. The second thing, it's very light in terms of scale, and typically it takes a few enterprise or portfolio architects to do this type of analysis. So it's a nice and light way to introduce MBSE in case if you start totally from zero. I think this concludes our presentation. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, Greg.